The human ship had barely touched down on the icy planet when Kale realized that nothing about this mission would be simple. He had been sent to investigate a distress signal coming from a remote research outpost, a signal that flickered weakly across the cold void of space. The planet was unlike any he had seen before. Vast glaciers stretched for hundreds of miles, and jagged mountains cast dark shadows that seemed almost alive in the pale light of the distant sun. The air was thin, and every step he took threatened to break through the frozen crust beneath him. As he trudged across the icy plain, Kale's visor scanned for life signs. A faint reading flickered in the distance, a small, erratic pulse. He adjusted his gloves and headed toward it. The signal grew stronger, revealing the silhouette of a figure trapped in what looked like an abandoned landing pod. The figure was small, almost fragile, and Kyle's heart clenched at the sight of her struggling against the frost. The pod door was frozen shut, but Kale's tools easily cut through the ice. The door groaned as it opened, and the figure inside stumbled into the cold air. She looked human, yet there was something unmistakably alien about her. Her skin shimmered faintly in the icy light, and her eyes glowed a soft amber. She flinched at his presence, her body trembling not just from the cold. "Please," she whispered, voice barely audible over the wind. Her hands rose instinctively as if trying to shield herself. "Don't hurt me," Kale froze. He did not intend to hurt her. He only wanted to help, but the words hit him harder than any enemy fire ever could. She was scared, and rightfully so. Humans had a reputation across the galaxy for being unpredictable, and she had no way of knowing he was different. "I won't hurt you," Kyle said calmly, taking a step back to give her space. "I'm here to help."
"Can you stand?"
She hesitated, then nodded weakly. Kale reached out his hand, but she flinched again, shrinking away. He sighed quietly. Trust would not come easily, but he had no time for hesitation. The storm that had been building on the horizon was moving faster than expected, and they had no shelter. He gathered her carefully in his arms, noting how light and fragile she felt. She stiffened, rigid with fear, and Kale held her tighter, not to restrain her but to prevent her from falling into the snow. Every step he took was a battle against the wind that threatened to throw them off balance. The research outpost was only a few hundred meters away, a small structure half buried in ice and snow. Inside, the remnants of the lab were scattered, shattered equipment and frozen computers littering the floor. Kale set her down gently near a heating unit that had somehow survived the storm. She curled up, still trembling, and he couldn't stop the pang of guilt that shot through him. "You're safe now," he said softly, more to himself than to her. "I'll make sure nothing happens to you." Her eyes met his, filled with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Why help me?" she asked, voice cracking. "Humans, they—" Kale shook his head. "Not all humans are the same. I can't speak for everyone, but I can make sure you survive this storm." The alien girl, whose name he learned was Leora, explained that she had been a researcher studying the planet's unusual climate and resources. A sudden collapse of one of the ice tunnels had trapped her in the pod, and the outpost's communication system had failed before she could send a proper distress call. Days alone in the freezing cold had left her exhausted and mentally shaken. Kyle listened carefully, realizing how much she had endured. He offered her food and water from his pack, but she refused, shaking her head. Her alien physiology must be different. She needed time to recover, and forcing her would only make her more fearful. As the storm outside intensified, Kale worked tirelessly to reinforce the shelter. He repaired the heating unit and used the outpost's remaining supplies to create a barrier against the wind. Leora watched silently, still wary, but slowly. A tiny spark of trust began to form. Night fell, and the storm raged outside like a living thing, battering the structure with icy claws. Kale and Leora huddled near the heat, their bodies close for warmth. Despite his exhaustion, Kale felt a strange connection forming. It was not just empathy. Something about her resilience, her courage to survive against impossible odds drew him in. But as the storm reached its peak, a new danger emerged. The planet was not uninhabited. Strange creatures adapted to the freezing temperatures prowled outside. Kale's scanner picked up multiple life signs moving in erratic patterns, likely hunting for prey weakened by the storm. He knew they could not survive an encounter with these predators. "I have to get you somewhere safe," Kale said, determination hardening his voice. Leora's eyes widened, but she did not resist. The first step was clear. They would need to leave the outpost before the creatures found them. As dawn approached, the storm began to weaken, leaving a thin layer of fog over the icy landscape. Cale checked his equipment and prepared for the journey. Every movement was careful, deliberate. One wrong step and both of them could be lost to the cold or the predators lurking beyond the fog. Leora leaned heavily on Cale as they moved, her trust growing with every step he took to protect her. Yet Cale could see the emotional toll it was taking on him. The responsibility for another life weighed heavily, more than any battlefield he had faced. He was used to fighting for survival, but this, protecting someone who depended entirely on him, broke something inside him. Hours passed, and they reached the edge of a frozen canyon where Cale had spotted an abandoned transport vehicle on his scanners. The vehicle was old and battered, but it was their only chance. He worked quickly to repair it, all the while keeping an eye on the shadows that moved with unnatural precision across the ice. Finally, the vehicle hummed to life. Cale helped Leora inside, ensuring she was secure. As the engine roared, propelling them across the frozen landscape, Kyle allowed himself a moment to breathe. They were not safe yet, but the immediate danger had passed. Leora looked at him, her eyes softening. "You saved me," she said quietly. "I don't know why you did, but thank you." Cale's chest tightened. "Because it's the right thing to do," he replied, though the truth was more complicated. Her presence, her vulnerability had touched something deep inside him. Something he had thought was long buried under years of missions, battles, and solitude. As the icy planet disappeared behind them in the distance, Cale realized that this mission was unlike any other. It was not about survival or reconnaissance anymore. It was about trust, courage, and the fragile bond that had begun to form between human and alien, a bond that would be tested far beyond anything he had ever imagined. The journey ahead promised more dangers, more challenges, and perhaps more heartbreak. But Cale knew one thing for certain. He would do whatever it took to protect Leora, even if it broke him in ways he could not yet understand. And as the cold stars stretched endlessly before them, Cale whispered to himself, "I will not let anything happen to her, not while I can stop it." The vehicle's engines thrummed steadily, carrying them toward an uncertain future, a future where humanity might shine in ways even the galaxy could not predict. The transport hummed steadily across the icy plains, leaving the danger of the storm and the prowling creatures behind them. Cale kept his eyes on the scanner, watching for any signs of further threats. Leora sat quietly beside him, her eyes reflecting both awe and anxiety. She had survived hours trapped in the freezing pod, witnessed Cale's unwavering determination, and now, for the first time in days, she could breathe without fear of immediate danger. But the relief was fragile. Kyle knew the planet was unpredictable. Its storms came in sudden bursts, and the predators were only one type of challenge this frozen world held. He had studied the reports before landing, but nothing could fully prepare a human for the raw, living chaos of a planet untouched by civilization. Every step was a test of ingenuity and courage. After several hours, the scanner picked up an anomaly, a large structure partially buried under ice. Cale recognized it immediately from the mission files, an old research station abandoned decades ago. It was damaged, but it had been built to endure the harsh conditions. If they could reach it, they might find shelter and supplies, even if rudimentary. "Can you walk a bit?" Cale asked gently, stopping the vehicle near a ridge. Leora nodded, wincing as she struggled to stand. Cale helped her, steadying her with a firm hand at her back. Even though she was alien, her fragile form reminded him of humans he had known in childhood. Small, determined, and resilient. Together, they trudged through the snow, the wind biting at their faces. The research station loomed ahead, jagged lines of metal and ice creating a strange silhouette against the pale sky. Cale's heart skipped a beat as he realized how isolated they were. One misstep, one failure in judgment, and they could be trapped in the cold forever. The entrance to the station was partially collapsed, but Cale's strength and ingenuity turned it into a passage. He cleared the ice and debris, using every tool at his disposal. When the door finally opened, a rush of cold air greeted them, followed by the dim glow of emergency lights that had somehow survived decades. Leora stepped inside, her footsteps cautious echoing across the metal floor. The station smelled of rust, frost, and time itself. Kale set his pack down and moved to a control panel checking the energy levels. Surprisingly, a generator still worked, enough to provide minimal heat and power the lights. "This will help," Kale said. "We can rest, recover, and plan our next steps." Leora nodded, her voice quiet. "I never thought anyone would come for me." Her amber eyes, still wide with wonder, met his. Kale felt a strange warmth in his chest. She was grateful, yes, but there was more. There was something unspoken, a connection formed through shared danger and survival. Kyle didn't have time to dwell on it. The station, though seemingly abandoned, had a recorded history that made him uneasy. It had been a research site for studying extreme climates and rare resources. Its scientists had disappeared under mysterious circumstances, leaving behind only journals, equipment, and incomplete experiments. If any part of the research was still intact, it could be valuable or dangerous. He spent hours examining the systems, restoring power where possible, and ensuring the structure was safe. Leora assisted where she could, her hands small and precise, showing skills that clearly went beyond what Kale had expected. Though exhausted, her determination impressed him. She was not just surviving, she was thinking, analyzing, and learning quickly in the face of uncertainty. Night fell again, but inside the station, warmth slowly returned. Kale prepared a small meal, sharing it with Leora. She ate cautiously, her alien biology clearly different, but the food was sufficient to sustain her. As they ate, Kale realized the depth of what he had undertaken. This was no longer just a rescue mission. It was a test of his endurance, leadership, and humanity. The following day, Kale explored the station further, mapping safe paths and checking the environment for hazards. Leora accompanied him, and during their explorations she revealed fragments of the research left behind. Some data suggested the planet held resources that could sustain life in extreme conditions, while other logs hinted at strange anomalies. Creatures adapted in ways that challenged conventional biology, sudden shifts in temperature, and electromagnetic storms that interfered with communication and navigation. Kyle listened carefully. He had trained for combat and survival, but this required more than skill with weapons. It demanded ingenuity, adaptability, and understanding. Humanity had faced challenges like this before, and it was that resilience, that willingness to face the unknown, that had brought him this far. He explained to Leora that together, they could navigate these dangers, learn from the planet, and perhaps even uncover the mysteries the previous researchers had failed to solve. But the peaceful rhythm of their work was soon interrupted. Sensors picked up movement outside, too large and fast to be anything they had seen before. Kyle grabbed his weapon, alert and ready. The creatures were approaching, their forms obscured by the fog and ice. But their intent was clear. They were hunting. Kale positioned himself near the entrance, using the station's design to his advantage. He guided Leora to a secure location within the station, ensuring she was protected. Then, with calculated precision, he engaged the creatures. His strategy combined human ingenuity with patience and observation. He had no illusions these beings were adapted perfectly to this harsh environment, but Kale's determination, planning, and willingness to take calculated risks gave him an edge. The battle was tense, each move critical. Kyle used the terrain, the station's corridors, and the environment itself to outmaneuver the creatures. Finally, after hours of careful engagement, the predators retreated into the frozen wilderness, leaving Kale exhausted but victorious. Leora emerged from her hiding place, her expression a mix of awe and relief. You really saved us," she said softly. Her words were not just gratitude, they were recognition of the courage and resilience that humans could bring to even the most alien and dangerous situations. Kale nodded, wiping frost and sweat from his brow. "We survive because we work together," he replied. "That's what being human is all about, adapting, helping, and never giving up." The days that followed were quieter but filled with purpose. Kale and Leora explored the station, documenting the remaining research, repairing equipment, and preparing for eventual departure. Along the way, Kale taught her human problem-solving methods, showing her how to combine her scientific knowledge with his tactical experience. Leora, in turn, shared insights about her physiology, her species' adaptation to harsh conditions, and the subtle ways the planet's anomalies could be leveraged for survival. In the process, Kyle began to understand the meaning of true resilience. It was not just physical strength or tactical skill. It was empathy, trust, and the willingness to protect life even when it demanded everything you had. And in Leora, he saw the same qualities reflected back: a courage born of adversity, a mind sharp and curious, and a spirit that refused to yield. When the day came to leave the planet, Kale and Leora were ready. The transport, repaired and reinforced, stood waiting outside. They loaded supplies, secured the research data, and prepared for the journey home. As the engines roared to life, the icy plains receded beneath them. Kale looked over at Leora, who smiled faintly, her amber eyes reflecting the glow of the engines and the distant stars. "Will we be safe now?" she asked quietly. Kale shook his head, smiling. "Safe is relative, but we will face whatever comes next together. Humanity doesn't give up, and neither should you." As the ship lifted from the icy world, Kyle felt a strange sense of fulfillment. They had survived the storm, the predators, and the unknown. They had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and come through stronger. Humanity had shown its best qualities: courage, ingenuity, and compassion. And in doing so, Kale realized that his journey was not just about survival. It was about proving, in the face of impossible odds, that humans could rise to any challenge, earning respect across the stars. The icy planet faded behind them, but its lessons lingered. Kale and Leora had formed a bond forged in adversity, a bond that transcended species and survival. And as the ship sailed toward the distant horizon, Kale knew one truth: humanity had once again proven itself worthy of the galaxy's attention, not through conquest but through courage, compassion, and the relentless will to protect life no matter the cost. And somewhere deep inside, Kale felt a quiet satisfaction. They had survived together, and in doing so, they had changed the story of humanity in the galaxy forever.